All right, hey everyone, ready to jump into another deep dive. Today we're tackling how to become a computer hardware engineering technician. And we've got some awesome resources from RoleCatcher to help us out. Their career guide and interview guide are packed with insights. So let's get right to it.
Yeah, sound good. It's interesting. These days, AI is playing a bigger and bigger role in hiring. So being prepared is even more important now than ever before. We're going to look at what the job really involves, not just the technical stuff, but also how to really showcase those skills in an interview. You know what I mean?
For sure. I was checking out RoleCatcher's career guide, and I like how it lays out what this job is all about. It's really cool, actually. It's not just about being a tech whiz, it's about working with engineers. You're actually building and testing all the hardware that runs our world, like motherboards, routers, microprocessors,
Yeah.
all that cool stuff. And the career guide, it also shows how your career can grow in this role. You start as an entry-level technician helping with development, assembling things, but then as you gain experience, you can move into design and implementation, even project management. There's some really cool example profiles in there too, so you can kind of see where your career could go.
So let's get into some of these interview questions. I was looking at RoleCatcher's interview guide, and wow, some of these are real head scratchers. The first one that kind of jumped out at me is, describe your experience with computer hardware troubleshooting. I mean, it sounds straightforward enough, but what are they really trying to figure out when they ask that?
Well, I think they want to see like your process for problem solving,
Yeah.
How do you approach a problem? Think of it like you're a detective working a case. You start by figuring out what the issue even is. What questions do you need to ask?
Yeah.
What tools will help you diagnose it? And then you got to, eliminate those potential causes one by one, test out solutions, and finally you solve it. So it's not just about, listing off every problem you've ever fixed, but showing you've got a system. And then I bet they'll hit you with something like, okay, give me an example of a really tough hardware problem you solved. Got to be ready with a story that shows off your skills, right?
Definitely. And don't forget to mention any courses you've taken, certifications, or even personal projects. All that stuff shows you really know your troubleshooting stuff.
Oh, and speaking of showing off your skills, RoleCatcher's AI-powered CV builder can really help with that.
Yeah, that's a cool feature.
It helps you tailor your resume to match what employers are looking for.
It's super useful.
Okay, next question. What is your experience with computer networking? Yeah, again, sounds pretty simple, but there's got to be more to it than just knowing the basics, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's about understanding how all those computer systems connect and talk to each other. Think about projects where you've worked with network configurations, like
Well,
setting up routers and stuff. Or, maybe you've had to fix some connectivity issues. That all counts.
and this is where those certifications like CompTIA Network Plus can really come in handy.
Oh, definitely. Those certs prove you've got a solid understanding of networking, and interviewers love to see that.
So instead of just saying, I'm good with computers, you
Yeah.
could say, I've got experience configuring networks, troubleshooting connections, and I've got a CompTIA Network Plus certification to prove it.
Boom.
Mic
Yeah,
drop.
way better. Now, if they want to dig a little deeper, they might ask something like, can you describe a specific networking project you worked on and what were some of the challenges you faced? So be ready to talk about your role, the techie details, and how you overcame those obstacles. Be specific.
All right, let's get technical. How about this one? Can you explain your experience with hardware testing and validation?
Okay, so this one's all about showing your attention to detail.
Ah,
Like you really care about quality. You got to walk them through how you test components, run diagnostics, keep those records all neat and tidy. And even, suggesting ways to make things better based on what you find. That's a good one.
it's all about being thorough. Did you use any special testing techniques or tools?
Yeah.
Mention them. They might ask, what's your approach to documenting test results and making sure everything's accurate?
Yeah, they want to see that you're organized and you don't miss a thing.
And it kind of ties back to that teamwork thing we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
working with the engineers, mentioning how you've worked together to define those test parameters or troubleshoot issues during validation.
Absolutely. Shows you're a team player, can collaborate.
Okay, this next one might not be for everyone, but if you do have experience, this is your chance to shine. Describe your experience with firmware programming. What's the key here?
Well, it's about showing that you understand that low-level software that makes the hardware tick. Have you ever written, debugged, or updated firmware? Talk about those projects.
And even if you haven't done a ton of it, mentioning relevant coursework or personal projects shows you're willing to dig in.
Yeah, shows you're curious and you take initiative.
And if they hit you with a follow-up like, what are some of the challenges you faced with firmware programming and how did you overcome them? you'll be ready to impress.
Totally. And remember, RoleCatcher's AI feedback can help you fine-tune those answers, you know. It helps you highlight those specific skills they're looking for.
Love that feature. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. This question's all about staying ahead of the game. How do you stay up to date with the latest hardware technologies and trends?
Oh, this is a good one. They want to know if you're passionate, you know, if you're actually interested in this stuff. Talk about those industry magazines you read, conferences you've been to, online forums where you geek out. It all shows you're serious about this field.
And this is your chance to really show your enthusiasm. Mention a new technology that's got you excited and why.
Yeah. And be prepared for a follow-up question like, how do you see this technology changing the future of hardware engineering? They want you to think critically, show your insights.
Okay, let's get serious for a minute. How do you ensure that hardware components meet industry standards and regulations? Safety and compliance are a big deal, right?
Huge. You got to sure you understand those industry guidelines like FCC, UL, ROHS. Describe your experience with all the testing procedures, documentation, and any certifications you have.
Right, because those certifications really prove that you're committed to doing things the right way.
Exactly.
And be ready for a question like, can you give me an example of a time when you had to make sure something complied with a specific regulation? You know, a real-world example of how you handled that.
Good point. And even if you don't have a ton of experience, you got to show that you're willing to learn and adapt as those standards change.
Okay, two more questions before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. This one gets to the core of the role. Can you discuss your experience with hardware design and development?
All right, this is your chance to talk about the whole process of creating hardware. You know, from that initial idea to building a prototype and testing it out. Even if you haven't run a giant project, talk about anything you've designed or built, even personal projects.
Exactly. Have you messed around with Arduino boards? Built something cool with a Raspberry Pi? Share it. They might ask, what design software are you comfortable with? Or how do you approach prototyping and testing new designs?
This is all about showing your problem-solving skills, your creativity, your love for building stuff.
All right, last question for this part. Time to show them you can handle the tough stuff.
Yeah.
How do you approach troubleshooting complex hardware issues? Everyone loves a good problem solver.
For sure. Walk them through your process. How do you zero in on the problem, gather the info you need, use the right tools and techniques to diagnose it, and then figure out the best solution? Be clear, be concise, and really emphasize your analytical skills.
And think of a specific example where you totally nailed a complex troubleshooting situation. Be ready to explain how you thought it through and how you worked with others if you needed to.
Yeah, because teamwork is huge in this field. Being able to work together, especially when things get tough, that's a super valuable skill. All right, we're going to take a break here, but we'll be back soon to dive into more interview questions. And we'll explore how RoleCatcher can help you prep for that interview and land your dream job. Welcome back. So we've talked a lot about, those hardcore technical skills, but now let's dig into those soft skills, the stuff that really makes you stand out,
Yeah, it's not just about what you know, but how you work with others, how you communicate, how you solve problems. And RoleCatcher's Career Guide actually has a whole section on this. They call them essential skills.
Yeah, they're essential because, well, think about it. You got to be able to explain complex technical stuff to people who might not be as techie as you. You got to work well with engineers and be able to handle a fast-paced environment. It's a lot.
So how do these soft skills actually come up in an interview? Let's look at some more questions from RoleCatcher's Interview Guide. Here's one. Can you discuss your experience with project management in a hardware engineering environment? Now, I know if you haven't actually led a big project, this might sound kind of intimidating.
Yeah, you might be thinking, whoa, hold on. I haven't managed a whole team of engineers yet.
But it's not really about that, right?
Right. It's about showing that you can plan things out, organize stuff, and get things done.
Yeah. So think back to any project, big or small, where you had to manage your time, use resources wisely, maybe even work with a small team.
It could be anything, really, like a personal project, something you did for school, even volunteering.
Did you ever build your own computer? Or set up a home network? Those totally count.
Absolutely. And think about it. Did you set a budget? Stick to a timeline? Deal with unexpected problems? Tell them about it.
And what about the communication side of things? Did you keep people updated on your progress?
Right. Being able to communicate your plan and adapt to changes, that's huge in project management.
And they're going to ask for a specific example. Something like, tell me about a time you had to juggle a project with competing priorities. How did you handle that pressure?
You got to be ready with a good story.
And this is where RoleCatcher's AI feedback can really help. You can practice your answer and get personalized tips to make it even better.
It's like having a coach in your pocket.
Ooh, speaking of coaches, did you ever have a mentor who helped you develop those project management skills? That's something worth mentioning in the interview. Shows you're proactive and like to learn from others.
That's a really good point.
Okay, ready for another one? This time, it's all about security.
Okay, hit me.
How do you ensure the security and confidentiality of hardware designs and intellectual property?
Ooh, that's a big one. Especially these days, everyone's worried about security.
Yeah, it's super important to protect those designs and ideas. But what kind of experience are they looking for here? Most of us haven't worked on top secret government projects.
True, but even in, regular projects, you can still show that you understand security. Think about times when you had to handle sensitive info, keep data safe, or maybe even put some basic security measures in place.
Like using strong passwords, encrypting files, stuff like that.
Yeah. Or even thinking about physical security, like making sure no one can just walk in and grab stuff.
It's all about being aware of the risks and taking steps to minimize them.
Exactly. Shows you're thinking ahead.
And they might ask you about specific threats, like what are some common security risks in hardware engineering and how can you prevent them?
Be ready to talk about things like data breaches, hardware vulnerabilities, and staying up to date on all the latest security protocols.
It shows you're not just focused on building cool stuff, you're also thinking about keeping it safe.
And don't be afraid to say that you're still learning about security. It's a constantly changing field.
Okay, we've talked a lot about interview questions, but before we move on, I want to emphasize something really important about RoleCatcher. It's not just a website with some info. It's like a partner in your career journey.
Totally. They have all these tools and resources to help you beyond just the interview. They help you grow in your career.
Right. Remember that career guide we talked about earlier? Well, there's a section in there called Advancing Your Career, and it's full of great advice.
Yeah, they talk about continuous learning, networking, building your professional brand. It's all super helpful.
One thing I really like is how they emphasize certifications. They list out specific ones like CompTIA A plus S, Network plus SS, Cisco certs. Getting those can really boost your credibility and make you a much stronger candidate.
Oh, yeah. Certifications are huge in this field. Shows you're serious.
And they even explain what each certification covers, like what skills you'll learn.
That way you can pick the ones that are right for you.
For example, the CompTIA A plus cert shows that you understand hardware and software troubleshooting.
Which is basically this whole job, right?
Exactly. And they also talk about showing off your work through a portfolio, like using online platforms like GitHub, contributing to open source projects.
Yeah. It's a way to prove you can actually do the stuff you say you can do.
And they give you tips on how to build a cool portfolio and use those online platforms to get noticed.
It's all about going beyond just your resume.
And they don't stop there. They even have advice on networking, going to industry events, joining professional groups. It's about connecting with other people in the field.
Building those relationships is super important.
So RoleCatcher really is a one-stop shop for building a career in this field.
It's not just about getting the job. It's about having a successful and fulfilling career doing something you love.
I'm feeling inspired. But before we jump to the last part of our deep dive, I want to mention one more thing. RoleCatcher has this amazing AI-powered practice feature.
Oh, yeah. I was going to mention that. It's like a practice interview, but with AI.
It's like having a personal interview simulator.
Exactly. You can practice answering those common questions, get feedback on how you sound, and keep practicing until you feel super confident.
And here's the best part. It's tailored to the specific job you're going for.
How does it do that?
RoleCatcher's AI actually looks at the job description, figures out what skills and keywords they're looking for, and then gives you feedback to make sure you're hitting all the right points.
Whoa, it's like having a personal interview coach who knows exactly what the employer wants.
I know, right? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a quick breather here, but when we come back, we'll wrap things up. We'll give you some final tips and advice to help you nail that interview and kickstart your career as a computer hardware engineering technician. All right, we're back. Ready to wrap up our deep dive into becoming a computer hardware engineering technician.
We've covered a lot, from what the job's all about to how to handle those interview questions.
Yeah, and don't forget, RoleCatcher. They've got your back, not just for the interview, but for your whole career.
For sure.
But before we let you go, let's circle back to something we talked about earlier. Remember how fast technology changes?
Yeah, it's crazy. Always something new to learn.
Exactly. So here's a question for you listening out there. What are you doing to stay ahead of the curve? What new technologies or trends are you curious about? Stuff we might not have even mentioned today.
Oh, that's a good question. And you know what? That kind of curiosity, that's what's going to impress interviewers. It shows you're not just looking for a job, you really want to be a part of this whole tech world and help it grow.
Totally. And it's okay if you don't have all the answers right now. The important thing is to be curious, ask questions, keep learning.
And RoleCatcher's got all kinds of resources to help you do that. They're always updating their stuff with the latest trends and technologies. They have interview guides on all sorts of stuff, from specific hardware to crazy new things like AI and machine learning.
It's like a personalized roadmap for your career. So as you get ready for that interview, remember to show them your passion, your curiosity, your willingness to learn, and of course, those awesome technical skills.
Yeah, all that stuff is going to make you stand out. It shows you're going to be a valuable part of any team.
You got this. Go out there and ace that interview. We know you've got the knowledge, the skills, and the support you need to succeed.
Absolutely. Good luck. And remember, the future of technology is in your hands.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.